everybody, welcome to the Improv Summit. As always, I'm your host, Spencer. With me today, I have a very special guest. And I always say I have a special guest, so I change it up a little bit. So now I just take the person's first name, pick an adjective that starts with the letter of that first name, and introduce them as such. And today I have with me, Rad Ryan. Ryan, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Spencer. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Might be doing a lot better before I did that, but
I'll
now
be
I'm
rad.
doing.
That's cool.
I was like, maybe I'm doing better now that I did that. Maybe I feel like much more rad, you know?
Yeah. Leech off me. It's great.
Yeah, great, perfect. All right, cool. Let's just dive into this, shall we? People know about me, and I tell them, I guess, the same stories all the time as if no one's ever heard it before, but I realize I tell the same story on this episode many times. So we're just going to dive in and talk about you,
Okay.
my friend. Let's start with the very simple question of your improv background. What's your improv experience, your improv background?
So I got into doing improv in August of 2007. So what is that? Can't do the math. What is that? 14 years?
14
Yeah.
years.
14
Yeah,
years.
as of like recently.
Yeah, happy anniversary. So I was in high school, and my school had a comedy sports program. And even when I was like younger, I grew up watching like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And when they would do, they line up, they do the like songs, or they do the line game, like Irish drinking songs, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I would always like come up with my own lyrics, like after the fact, to like try and do like what they would do. And then when I got into high school, I was like, oh, we got an improv program. Great. I'm good. This is like what I want to do. And luckily we had a whole like full supported comedy sports program. And I did it. I was good at it. And I stuck through with it ever since. And now I'm on comedy sports main stage. And yeah, I've done some shows here and there around town, but primarily it's just been like comedy sports focused. I love the atmosphere. I love the group there. That's where I met you. And yeah, I guess that's my background. I don't have too much to speak of elsewhere, but
No, that's great.
I've been doing it for a while.
It just made me think of the fact that I was in high school in 2007, and I was like, cool, wow, that was a long time ago, because
Right.
my high school 10-year reunion was like before pandemic. So I was like, geez, how long? Like, I was like, how long have I been out of high school? And then I realized, like, my brother is turning 24 this year, and I was like, geez, I remember when I was 7 and he like just came out of the womb.
Right.
So like, wow, this is like,
Yeah.
time. That's
time, bro.
That's,
Oh yeah.
geez, wow, that's a lot. Anyway, time aside, I guess I was gonna say, speaking of time, but time aside, it's the same thing, but different. Anyway, the point is, I'm terrible at segues, and that's totally fine. I can do a fake segue on camera, but I'm also terrible at object work. And if you watch these episodes, for those that watch, you'll know that my object work is Terrible, which spells terrible, because my computers exist up here, and my toothbrush is a big giant fist. But other than that, I'm okay other than that. But that being said, what do you love about improv? That was my whole point of that.
I like being surprised. That to me is very important, when, especially for comedy. Anything that catches me surprised is going to get a laugh out of me. It's not just like, like shock humor, because that has a limit to where it's like, okay, now you're just being like egregious. But I like knowing nothing about what I'm about to see or what I'm about to experience in a scene. It keeps it fresh, keeps it exciting for me, and allows me to explore weird ideas or like moods I may be in. That's where you get the peaks and valleys, of your own personal style. And I think it's easy to explore that in an improv environment. And when you do that, you foster a big tool belt to use in just your everyday life of experiences to draw from, or things that are, oh, this reminds me of this from this, and I can incorporate that in this small little way into what I'm doing in my scene. Yeah, it's just unlimited possibilities. Like one of my coaches, he says that in like a simple transaction scene, like, oh, welcome to Starbucks. Yeah, here's your coffee. There's an
Welcome to
infinite amount of
Starbucks.
scenes that could happen within just handing the money over, an infinite amount. And I like just that whole range of possibilities. It excites me. It gets me going.
That's great. And the least surprising is, all right, well, here's your coffee. Thanks. Here's your money. Okay, have a
Right.
great day. Bye.
Yeah,
Those
it
transaction
could be
scenes.
something so subtle or something so grand, like, oh, I remember you from high school, or like, why are your hands wet? You
Yeah.
could
Oh, yeah.
any number of things.
Yeah. To steer it away from the transaction
Right.
element. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love the idea of surprise because in improv, so I had this thing a while back, and it gets into this idea of surprise, that I had an internship back in college that, and I had several, so, but there was one in particular that really like drew down my confidence. They told me I was the worst intern they've ever had. They told me that I hit rock bottom. Like it was like
Damn.
rough. I had been cornered in a room once with no way to escape. Like it was, I think it was like the beginning of gaslighting without me knowing what that was
Sure.
prior. And one thing that I had struggled with throughout throughout the rest of my undergrad, throughout grad school, throughout my professional life was confidence. And when I started taking improv classes, I was so worried about doing everything right
Yes.
that I was like, okay, I'm not confident still. But then as I started to grow into how improv works and picking up on those little surprises, when I would surprise myself was the moment when I had all these aha moments of like, oh, this is how improv works. Oh, okay, I would get these moments of like little elements that I could put in my tool belt of like, oh, that's what yes and means, or like that's how I can say no while also supporting what's going on in the scene or supporting my scene partner and all this. Like I can say no in a scene. I don't have to just say yes and this. I can say no as long as I, as the improviser, am yes-anding what the other improviser is doing.
Sure.
So it's like, oh, you're so annoying, stop doing that. It's like I want you to keep doing whatever that thing is in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying yes, I'll stop because then the scene is over. I'm saying no, I'm not going to stop, but yes, I understand what you want me to do is you want me to keep
Right.
annoying you in that scene.
Yeah, the
So for me,
intention
that was
behind
like,
it.
right. And so that was like, I had all these like aha moments throughout different classes that I took or different scenes that I watched. And like, I don't remember much improv that I do or watch ever because improv
Mm-hmm.
is so in the moment that's what makes it so wonderful is recreating it is often very difficult. And so for me, there's like 3 or 4 maybe scenes and lessons that I remember because they were like moments where they went, oh, I get this. And so like I've picked up on it because it made me think of X, Y, and Z. Are there any scenes for you that you've ever done or watched or coached or played or whatever it is that you like remembered those scenes because it had some kind of impact on you?
Yeah, definitely. There was a scene I was doing where it was we were acting out the game was dueling theme songs, so they sing a fake theme song, or they sing a theme song for a fake show, and then you act out an episode of that show. And it was a children's show where a like humanoid bunt cake goes to like comfort kids with anxiety.
Great.
And I was a kid with anxiety. And so I'm just like, playing in sandbox, and then a humanoid bunt cake appears behind me. And in the moment when they appeared, like, oh, hello, I was like, okay, I can either honor what was given to me, like with the setup of the song, or I could be in the moment and treat this as if I actually saw a humanoid bunt cake in person. So I went with the latter and just screamed the entire scene, like out of fear, like get away from me. And the audience just died laughing from the honesty of that scene.
Sure.
Because yeah, that would be terrifying and horrifying. And the whole setup was like, oh, this is supposed to be a kid show, but it went like horribly awry. Was where the comedy like came from. So I was still like honoring the setup because everyone else was like, no, you're supposed to be like this. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like not having it. That was a big one for me. For it's like, yeah, trust your instincts. Go with the reality of the scene. Because more often than not, my own personal style, I don't really do too much like wacky characters, or like I play myself a lot, or a version of myself a lot. And what aids that is being honest in the scene and like calling things out that like don't make sense, because if you're confused on stage, the audience is double confused. So that's like where my strong suit lies. So that scene really reaffirmed that for me. Let me see if I can think of another. I play little kids really well. So I one scene I was a kid doctor like Doogie Howser.
Yeah.
And I gave someone like a piece of paper and I was like, draw your symptoms with crayons. I was happy with that.
I teach kids. I can play kids very well. I may not usually do a voice, but like I'm like, oh, I got a boo boo. Oh, yeah. I can really get into the character's mindset of a kid, because kids like try and like fake things. Like they're like, ow, ooh, and I'm like, let me see it. Oh, I'm fine. Thanks for the attention. Like I get this. I was a kid once. I did all this stuff. I don't buy it. Or then when they like fall, everyone wants to go run over and be like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, leave the kid alone. Just ask them if they're like, you're fine. Get up, walk it off. Then like, because if you start to give them attention, they're gonna make a scene out of it. They're gonna really like milk it. And I'm like, all right, listen, just tell them they're fine, and then go check it. Like, don't let the kids crowd around them, because then they get really anxious and nervous and like, oh no, something's really wrong because everyone's coming to see if I'm okay. I'm like, just give them a Band-Aid and they'll be fine. But people don't seem to understand that concept. I'm like, listen, it'll make your life a lot easier by just telling them to walk it off. But going back to what you said about wacky characters, I try to see. I did iOS first, and it's a lot about like realistic like relationship. And so I do a lot of like where I just, like you said, like I heighten my scene just a little bit of who I am. But I do know that like with my two prop team or different teams that I'm on, people know that I don't play a lot of wacky characters, and I also am really bad at like accents and dialects. So they will make me do those things. Yeah. And it's not because I'm like I just don't generally do them, but the thing is like they know that I will do them. Right. If they make me do them. And I won't be like mad about it. I'll just be like, oh, come on, I know I don't know like this, but it's not that like I think there's a difference between me going, come on, like I'm not good at this, but I'll do it anyway, versus like I do not want to do that. And I think that's like going back to the characters thing for me. It's like I just don't generally like groundling style. People talk about groundling style, which a lot of people love groundlings. Groundlings isn't necessarily the best fit for me because I'm not a very character-based player. Right. And I think that like some people absolutely love it, and I know people who are excelling at groundlings because they're so good at it. Right. For me, I've been hesitant about doing it because I'm worried. I mean, money's one thing, but I'm also worried about that, which is why like I've explored, iOS, Comedy Sports, UCB, Second City, and there are some of those programs where I was like, this feels right, and some of them where I'm like, not sure if this is for me, and that's not a bad thing, because we've talked a lot about on this show that how improv is there's so much variety to improv, that not every single thing of improv is going to be everyone's cup of tea. There's going to be certain things, certain classes, certain schools, certain ideas like characters or dialects that you're really going to like dive into and sink into, and other ones where you're going to be like, nope, no thank you, I don't want to ever come back, and that's like perfectly fine. But that being said, for you, what are some of like your favorite styles or types or elements of improv that you really like?
I really like annoyance style, where you're like torturing your fellow improviser, with the caveat that the audience has to be in on it. Like the audience has to know that you are purposefully messing with your fellow improviser. As long as you have that, then that to me, oh man, because it just feels like we're all, including the audience, in on this like inside joke where we're like, poking fun, and it makes everything feel more intimate that way. And I think it it creates more of a bond between your stage partner. Because you'll go backstage like, oh, like you got me, you rib each other a bit,
Yeah.
and it's like when you party with your friends, sometimes like crazy stuff happens at parties that like, oh man, that was like not great. Or like, oh, I remember when you were in like this terrible position. Oh, what a funny time. It's like that, but for on stage. And it just makes everyone like tighter, I feel, going through those kind of why are you messing with me experiences.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It has to be in good fun. It can't be like screw this person,
Right.
I'm just gonna mess with them just to mess with them. Like I said, the audience has to be in on it. Yeah, so that's like, I would say once that style got introduced to me, it's like, oh, this is this is where I live right here.
That's great.
And I mean, you can take, even if you're not like fully on full bore with a particular style, you can take elements of it and put it and sprinkle it over your whole entree of performance. Yeah, so I guess that's what I do. That's where it leans into me playing a version of myself more often than not, where it's the annoyance style where I'm calling things out, or I'm really big on telling a story, like an actual narrative with a beginning, middle, and end.
Sure.
And to me, character is secondary to that, because a scene with just wacky characters, but like literally nothing happens, is boring to me. So if in telling that story, I can then sprinkle in, a little character, a little annoying style, then that's like, I'm okay with not being the funniest person on stage if we're telling a decent story in the scene. If we're fulfilling the promise to the audience with our opening offers of what we're setting up, I don't care if I'm funny. Everyone else can be funny. That I just care about that the show is good. Like, I'm okay with being the lead. I'm okay with being support. It's totally fun. The show is above everything else to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. IO. One of the things that IO, what is it, like the IO like motto is like, it's like, you have like a good IO show and a bad IO show. And I remember being like a bad IO scene is a scene that's just not funny, but it's two characters having a really valid conversation about each other. And like, it's like a really solid like relationship scene. That's not necessarily funny. That's like a quote unquote bad IO scene, because it's not funny, but the characters are so grounded in reality that it feels like you're watching like two characters that you can relate to on stage. Like, that's not a bad scene at all. So that was like the idea of that.
To me, it's a bad scene if it's just like, hey, what's going on? Like, you can have grounded characters, but today has to be the day. Like, there has to be a reason why we see any particular scene. Not just like, oh, their relationship got stronger. That could be the overall point, but if today is not the day, then to me, when I see a scene like that, it's like, okay, like what's the point of this? But doing character work is important. Like,
oh, for sure,
grounded character and like establishing a relationship is actually rare in an improv scene. To have like a wholesome moment between characters where they learn and grow, it's more often than not. But yeah, today has to be the day, man. There's got to be a point to why I'm watching this.
Yeah, that's true. That being said, when we talk about like this, like everyday aspect of like these relationships between characters, often we want to relate to what we see on stage. I mean, for more or less, like we can relate to something that we see on stage, which sort of kind of leads me into this question. Very loose segue, but the point is, in everyday life, we use improv to get through the day. Are there any elements of improv that you use almost on an everyday basis that helped shape your day-to-day life?
Yep. I work sales for a exotic lumber company. That's my day job. When I started getting into improv, I was like, if you're doing improv for the money, you're going to be miserable. So you need to get a day job. So I'm on the phone all day with customers and people like that. And using improv, it has helped me like with my word choice and knowing when to let other people speak. Like, you don't want to talk over people when you're on stage. You want to give them, their platform, and you go back and forth. My work also lets me coach new people by using improv techniques to like help them when they like first start on the phones, and we'll do exercises like, okay, you're gonna talk on the phone as if you are me or like somebody else. You're gonna do somebody else's style, which is an improv thing.
Sure.
Or we're gonna do a fake phone call. You can't use the letter L, right? Which is hard because I work for a lumber company. So,
Yeah.
but and it's hard for people that don't have an improv background. But then afterwards, I'm like, okay, you see how tough that conversation was? Now imagine how much easier it's going to be when you can say anything that you want. Now you won't be as afraid because nothing will be as bad as when you were limited with your word choice. And there's other exercises I do, but I always take that stuff with me, and I don't have fear because I know that no matter what, I can come up with something to say in the moment. And improv has helped me like read people a lot with like their intention, because when you're on stage with somebody, it's very much like we are trying to be on the same wavelength here. It's like kind of mind reading-esque, like you're really trying to know the intention of whoever you're speaking with on stage. And that kind of instinct carries over into so many facets of life. So it's been like the most important thing I've ever gotten into, and it's shaped me as a person.
Great. I love it. That's really all I needed to know. That's the answers the question of what is the meaning of life. And that being said, speaking of the meaning of life, do you have any plugs or pitches, anything you want to shout out?
Well, I'm Comedy Sports Mainstage. We're starting to do live shows again. So in-person live shows. I did one last night. It was very fun. I'm doing one today. This airs later, so I won't say the date. But we're coming back, baby. So check that out. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Curblin, Curblin. I don't post too many self-promoting things on there, but I make jokes. I also I do D&D online, so check that out. But Comedy Sports is the one I do most of the time. So buy a ticket, take the ride.
Great. Looking forward to seeing Comedy Sports in the new space that I don't know exists as of this recording. Great. That being said, thanks so much for joining me here, Ryan, on the Improv
Thanks
Summit.
for having me.
I do have one final question for you, and that question is the reason why the Improv Summit exists. Now, we kind of sort of talked about it a little bit throughout this conversation, but a lot of times I had people come up to me and say, "Oh, Spencer, you take so much improv. Where should I take improv?" And they do it like in that panic mode. And it's always a hard question for me to answer because there's a lot of factors involved in knowing like what would be a good fit for someone or what their goals are in improv. So if someone came up to you and asked you that question, where should I take improv? What would be one piece of advice or one tidbit you get to someone to help guide them on their improv journey?
The most practical advice I can give somebody is, if you've never done improv before, is find a place that you can afford in your budget. It doesn't matter where. If you can afford it, just take that first, class, take that first, 4-week course, whatever it is. Once you do that, you will know what you want to get out of improv. Just any experience is better than none. And there's a lot of places where it's like, you got to shell out cash up front, and then you might not even like it, So you got to find some place that you can afford, do it, and then see, where it goes from there. I was fortunate that I was in high school, so it was low stakes for me to enter. And if you're not in that position, hey man, it's cutthroat out there, and rents keep going up.
Even in high school now.
Yeah. And So that'd be my advice, is you're not going to know exactly what you want out of improv until you actively start doing it. So any talk to me beforehand is kind of moot until you actually get some reps in.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that's a lot of great advice, especially everything's so cutthroat. No, just kidding. Improv is fun. It's great. I mean, and it also depends, like, and that's another thing to think about is as far as like the cutthroat element of improv, do you want to go somewhere that is more competitive, or do you want to go somewhere that is less competitive, or do you want to go somewhere that plays up the idea of it being competitive, even though it doesn't matter, like a comedy sports,
Right.
where it's competitive, like a sport game. Wow, like sports, but it's not at all competitive between like people, or like you know, there's a little bit of levels to it, but it's not like a competitive, like cutthroat environment, even though it's playing off of the idea of competition.
No matter where you go, it's going to be competitive, not necessarily to other people. You're going to be competing with the version of yourself that you have in your head. Like you're always going to want to try to one up your past performance, or, you know, live to the standard that you set for yourself. So it doesn't matter where you go, but you need that drive. You need to want to get better.
That's great. Well, again, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me here on the Improv Summit. I told you that was the last question I had for you, but as always on this show, I am a giant liar. My Pinocchio nose doesn't grow because I tell people I'm going to lie. And that question is not the last question I have. I have another question for you. Okay. And that question is, you know, we've been talking a lot about improv. You want to do some improv?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. All right, we're going to do some improv. Ryan, what I need from you is the answer to this question. Would you like a location, a relationship, or a word?
Location.
A location. All right, 2 suggestions, and you tell me which one you want. The suggestions are a sauna and the world's biggest shoe.
Ooh, sauna.
Okay, great. Sauna, who would you like to initiate this scene?
I will.
Great, thank you.
Ooh. Hey there.
Sup?
Hope you don't mind someone else entering your space here.
It's fine. It's so hot.
Oh yeah, I felt hotter.
Yeah, I feel your body heat emulating. It's making it hotter, actually.
It's emanating, not emulating.
Is that what did I say?
You said emulating.
I'm sorry, my brainwaves are just a little.
It's like you've never been in a sauna before.
I mean, I've been in many. It's just the heat is messing with my brainwaves. That's all.
You knew what you signed up for when you came in.
I signed up for an individual sauna. I didn't sign up to share a sauna, but I mean that's fine. I get it. It's busy right now, so it's totally fine.
Welcome to LA Fitness, bro.
Are you meditating in my sauna?
It's not your sauna.
I mean, I guess it belongs. I mean, it's my sauna time. I guess is really the. You know what? Fine. We'll just sit in silence, I guess. Just sit in silence and meditate and just like not make any sound at all. We will just sit in complete and utter silence while we sweat our bodies off and emulate our body heat. Our body heat will emulate. The idea is I'm going to keep talking because if you're trying to be quiet, I'm trying to kick you out of my sauna because it's only a sauna for one.
You don't bother me. The only thing that bothers me is you saying emulate instead of emanate.
I feel like there's a moment where emulate would work in this situation.
No.
Because you're emulating body heat.
It's emanating.
Emanate is when it comes out, but like emulating is like you're replicating body heat. So like the body heat that's replicated comes into the space. So you're emulating body heat while emanating.
You emulate Nintendo games on a computer.
You emulate, like you're emulating, like there's a feeling
you are becoming heat.
Of body
is that
heat.
what you're telling me?
Yes, I'm becoming hotter. I guess it's like I'm emulating heat. You're emanating heat onto my body, but you're emulating the idea of more heat into the sauna for one. Am I making any sense?
You're a fucking idiot.
See. Thanks ever so much for coming to the Improv Summit. As always, I'm your host, Spencer. That's Ryan. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.